It's a real thrill to introduce my guest today, the great jazz master of the vibraphone, Terry Gibbs. Terry, welcome to the Nikhil Hogan Show.
It's nice talking to you, Nicole. It's really great talking to you, especially you calling from Singapore. That's pretty far away from where I live.
Well, what can I say? I'm so thrilled to be able to speak with you, and I'm a real fan of Bebop. And you are someone who...
Not as much as I am. I've been playing it all my life, Nicole. And to me, I think that really is like the epitome of knowing jazz music, because of how it's played and how it was put together by the genius of all time, Charlie Parker, and then Dizzy, of course, and Bud Powell. But how it was put together with the harmonics and knowing having a technique. It called for a musician to really play that music, you know?
You actually were playing during the peak of Bebop, and so I would really love to know what it was like back then, really what the real landscape of being a musician at that time was like. You had your first Bebop job, 1946, with Bab Gonzalez, Roy Haynes, Bobby Tucker, and Gene Ramey. How did that...
That was my first 52nd Street job ever. It was... We were all unknowns. Believe it or not, it was a one-nighter, and we didn't even know each other. And you know, there's something about music. There's no number to music. Let me give you... I'm going to get away from that and go and tell you something else. You know, when I was 25 years old, when I worked, or close to 26, when I worked with Benny Goodman. Now, Benny Goodman, I was 25, he was 42. And after we played 4 bars, we were the same age. When you play with people that really know what they're doing, there's no number to jazz when you get on stage and play with somebody. But getting back to what you said, playing bebop those days was, especially when you got a chance, when you learn, you know, let's face it, it took me a while. I just came out of the Army, as you read, and when I first heard Bird and Diz, I didn't believe what I was hearing. You know, it was one of those things.
You saw them live. You saw them performing live, right? Was that the first time you discovered them, or did you hear them on a record?
Well, you know, when I left to go to the Army, it was what they called swing music. Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, Lester Young. With my favorite musicians at that time were Lester Young and Roy Eldridge, and that's one of the reasons I quit playing vibes and played drums, is I had all this technique, and they played a little more simple and played beautiful. But then when I came home on furlough, and my friend Tiny Khan took me to hear Bird and Diz, and he said, there's a new music called Bebop. Nicole, that's like me telling you, Nicole, I want you to hear a new music called Shmoogadaga. I said, what the heck is Bebop? I mean, he was like, I thought my friend went nuts all of a sudden. My closest friend in life was saying something I couldn't understand. And then he took me to hear Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. And the wildest thing, my introduction to bebop was Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, Max Roach, and Curly Russell. Now, you tell me a better band that you're going to find, especially those days. These were guys that really knew the language. They knew the language, you know. And for me, I had the technique. The funny thing is, I was in an Army band at that time. I was playing drums with a 33-piece orchestra, making movie pictures, and playing with a dance music with a big band, and then I play vibes once in a while with a jam session with a few of the guys that play jazz, and then when I went back in the Army, we had a jam session, and I heard Bird and Diz, and I heard all those notes. I tell you, I had a nervous breakdown. Well, you read my book, but I wrote it. I actually, and I'm not kidding when I wrote I had a nervous breakdown, because I followed them from 4 o'clock in the morning till 10 and something and slept in doorways of stores. I didn't believe what I was hearing, Nicole. It was something, there's a cliche, looking for Shangri-La. I think it was a movie picture. Well, that was Shangri-La for me, hearing what they were doing. And so I followed them all over, and then I went back to the Army, and we'd have a jam session, and after we played a melody, I would play 4 billion notes, and the first one was always right, and the last one was always right. In the middle, I don't know what the hell I was doing, because I didn't know what Burton did. I only heard them for a few days. But then when I got out of the Army, I got a chance to go down here and play. And not only that, I went to jam sessions, the guys that were learning bebop. There were guys around, even Jerry Mulligan was one of the guys.
Yep.
And like I said, I played my first job with Roy Haynes. They were also going to jam sessions learning bebop,
Right. Does it seem like yesterday when you saw that first performance with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie? I mean, it seems...
Well, there's certain things in life you never forget. I believe it or not, I saw the first performance of Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker, and I saw their last performance. I was there at their last performance when they hadn't talked for 2 years. They haven't talked maybe for 2 years, and then they were brought into Birdland to play together with Bird, Diz, Bud Powell, I think it was Tommy Potter, and could be Roy Haynes too. And they were brought together to play, and it was a broadcast. In fact, it was recorded. And there's a record where Symphony Sid, the disc jockey, mentions my name because we were at the bar, and Symphony Sid was the announcer, and after he played a tune, he would announce a tune. So he went over to me, Mike, after he played a tune. He says, I was just talking to Terry Gibbs at the bar, and he said, this is the greatest thing you'll ever hear in your life. So, and it was their last performance.
One question I would like to ask you is, how did you learn bebop? I mean, and that's a question that anyone who's a fan of bebop today, young musicians who are listening to this, they might think, you were there. How did you teach yourself bebop?
Well, I really had good memorization. I could memorize fast. I was actually a child prodigy, and I played xylophones when I was 12. I had a scholarship to Juilliard as a snare drummer and timpanist. I played all the percussion instruments, but I could memorize fast. But memorizing what they did called for much more than memorizing. It was learning the language, how they articulated. Where I learned, believe it or not, I learned more from Dizzy Gillespie first, because as a drummer, Dizzy Gillespie played rhythmical figures that if you took away the notes, sound like a drummer, like bop, 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 bee. And you take it was like bop, bop, bop. So I could learn those things first rhythmically. Charlie Parker, you had to be George Gershwin. I mean, I don't know where he came from at all. If in my book you notice I write that the only genius I know of, in my opinion, is Charlie Parker. Then I mentioned that my favorite musician, because there was no maybes with him, and what I meant was, with Dizzy Gillespie, as much as I loved him, he was the greatest drum player I ever heard. Maybe you could have said his sound. Maybe could have said it. And then Art Tatum, who in the 30s was so far ahead harmonically and technically, that you could have said maybe, because he used to change all the chord changes so fast, and that maybe he was a little cold. Maybe. But with Charlie Parker, I couldn't find a maybe. Everything he did was perfect. Do you know that? The very famous record of Lover Man that he plays on?
Right, the one where he was out of kind of...
having a nervous breakdown while he was playing.
Yeah.
And we were in New York when he did that in California, and all of us who love Bird, and the story came back to us that Charlie Parker had a nervous breakdown. We figured, oh, God, everything he did was so great. That's going to be terrible. I never heard a better chorus I love her, man, in my life. I figured, when am I going to have my first nervous breakdown? I can hardly wait.
Yeah, and a lot of people really think that even at apparently his worst, he sounds so great.
There was no worst. There was no worst. Everything did was great. Seriously, there's not a Charlie Parker. He started the one thing he started that you can pick up on, of the use of other songs in the middle of a song. He would add little 2-bar phrases of another song in what he was playing, you know?
Right. Yeah. But Terry, you knew him personally as a...
Oh, yeah, I knew. Well, first of all, my first meeting, you read in the book, my first meeting with him, I always had a nervous breakdown. You want me to tell that story?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Charlie Parker was, I hate to say the word jive, he was like, he was a junkie. So he tried to con you out of money if you had, and you come out of, you walk out of the club you were playing and he'd stand there and say, give me $1 or give me $25, and you say, I haven't got any money. He says, where you play tomorrow? I'll come and sit in with you. And you give him the money, and then they come tomorrow, he never show up.
Yeah.
He never show. But I had a thing with Bird. I used to tell him, he asked me for $1 when I came out of the club at that same period of time. And I said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're the greatest. He said, begging. I really told him off, But you know what? He said, where you play tomorrow? I told him while he was playing, and I gave him the $1. I never expected him to show up. Anyhow, but when people heard that Bird was going to show up, you couldn't get in the club. This is a place that George Yall, the saxophone player, owned. He hired me to play at George Yall's club. So the place was mobbed. And we started to play out of nowhere. I'll never forget it. And in the 16th bar, while I was going to go into the next chorus, part of the chorus of the song, all of a sudden he walked in with a saxophone playing the next melody to the other, and he kept playing. Now, those days, guys, when I used to hear him play, would play 20, 30 choruses at a time. Time meant nothing to them at all. And so I knew that he did that because I heard him play 20, 30 choruses at a time. So now he comes out on the band and he's playing with us. And now I was scared because I think I got to follow him. There's a quartet. I got to follow him.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to follow him. I was just learning what he's doing. This is 1947 maybe, And so when it came to the 30th bar of the chorus, and music, so it came to 30th, those days were 32-bar songs. Came to the 30th, I bent down to tie my shoe. And when he kept playing on the first chorus, the next chorus, I stood up. And I waited 30 more bars, and I went down, and now I was going to tie my shoe. I untied the race, and I was going to tie it. I wanted to wait if he's going to quit playing. I won't come in, But he kept playing, so I stood up. And this kept going on. I bent down on the 30th chord. I loosened screws on my vibes, tightened them, whatever I could find to do to be laying on the floor.
Yes.
Because if you ask me, would I rather follow Charlie Parker, or would I rather fight Mike Tyson? I say fight Mike Tyson, because one punch and you're out with Mike Tyson.
Right.
Standing here waiting to come in and follow Bird, my heart was like going so fast. I wasn't sure what the hell I would even do. And after about 16 choruses, my piano player looked at me on the floor and says, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to follow me. We were like two nervous, scared idiots,
Yeah.
I don't remember what I did when I came in. Now let me tell you, that was a while. Now, about 6 years later, maybe 19, that was 19, about now 5 years, this is now 1952.
Okay.
Going on 53. I already learned the language of bebop, and they made me a band leader, and I was playing with, I had my own band, and I would hire a guy like Art Blakey, and I had the job, so I hired everybody you could think of that was unknown at that time who played good. Cora Silva, Billy Taylor, my piano players, Charlie Smith, the drummer, the only drummer on the video with Bird, and Art Blakey, and let me say, the guys like Billy Taylor, Horace Silva, I told you, and I hired all the best players because I had the job. Now I'm playing at a place called the Downbeat. The guy Monty K, who really started opening up all the clubs. He was opening a new club called the Bandbox,
Okay.
which is right near Birdland. And Billy Eckstein was the headliner. Billy Eckstein was very big those days.
Okay.
And Harry James' band, featuring Buddy Rich, was in his band, and my quartet. So after playing about 3 days, it was a month booking. After playing about 3 days, Monty K came to me, listen, we're taking Bird out of the hospital, and he's going to play. We're bringing him in there to play here. And he wants to play with you. I said, you mean he doesn't want to play with Buddy Rich or Billy Eckstein's rhythm section, Bobby Tuck and all those heavyweights? He said, no, he wants to play with you. So I said, great. So he played with us. Now, I always ask him what he wants to play. To say, Terry, you play the song you play. Don't worry. I'll just come in and play, He was so gracious. And by that time, I learned how to play so I could follow him. I mean, I couldn't play nearly as good, but I was making sense, So for a month, but I got a lesson for a month. But, getting a lesson from Bird, you got to be a composer to play like Bird. And, I don't care what he played at any tempo, you could slow it down and write a lyric to it, That melodic. Listen to Super Sax, how they transcribed his music. Wow. I mean, you think it would be hard to transcribe Bird. The only reason it was easier than anybody, because it was like transcribing a song.
Well, Terry, how many times did you play with Charlie?
That was that whole month. That was it.
Wow, a month.
Then I was on the road all the time after that, and Bird died close after that. Not after.
Wow.
But yeah, and I played with Dizzy Gillespie for 10 days. That was a wild up one also. I played opposite Diz and Bird a few times in Birdland. I was like sort of Morris Lee, who ran Birdland. They made me a band leader because they like what I did. I'm playing a visual instrument, so people love that. People really didn't know jazz, but they always loved the drummer and vibe players because they can listen to a tenor player or a trumpet. They don't, if the guy misses a note, he's a terrible trumpet player. They don't. Let's say, I hate to say this, but most of the audience really does know a great from a good good player.
That's a shame.
It's true, unless they're musicians. Anyhow, I was conducting a television show in 1968 called Opera. I started conducting television shows, writing, conducting television shows for about 20 years of my life, and I was legal director of the show, and it was a show that we did. Have you ever done a television show? Nicole, you're a musician, right?
I'm a musician, but no, not really. But go ahead, tell me about it.
In television, to do an hour-long show, you usually have to rehearse all week, and sometimes you rehearse the act like 3-4 times a day for a whole week. And you do that because the director wants to get his shots, Yeah. So actually the band doesn't get much chance except during rehearsal time and when the director's getting his shots. And so we did a show called Operation Tain, like Bob Hope, if you know that name.
Yeah.
He used to go to Vietnam. Well, we would do it from service camps around the country. But how we did it, we'd fly to a place, they set up the stage. I had my dream band, I had the big band, and we rehearse the show, shoot the next day. Then have a new show coming the next day, rehearse that show, shoot that show. So now we already got 2 in the can. We'd fly to the next place, rehearse a show, shoot the show, rehearse another show. So we did 4 shows in 9 days.
Wow.
So I had all the rest of the time off. They gave me Chuck Barris, who was the executive producer, had shows like the Gong Show. Remember those shows?
Yeah,
the dating
classic
game.
Shows.
They were big, I tell you. But this was like a variety show. And he loved the Dream Band. He loved me. And so he gave me a big office with I had a big record player. I had a piano there. And I would have to call all the acts,
Yep.
But I had all the time off. I had a music store at the same time. with a friend of mine. We used to, it was, for me, I just bought it because my accountant, I was making a lot of money at times. My accountant says, Terry, find something where you can have fun and lose music. And everything was guitar and drums those days.
Yeah.
There were no trumpets being sold, no nothing,
Yeah.
So this friend of mine who was a drummer, he played with Benny Goodman, had his own music store, and I asked him if he wanted to open a music store with me. So he just was used to my name.
Yeah.
It was called Terry Gibbs and Mel Zelnick's Music Stop. And we had all the young kids who we gave lessons and sold guitars and drums. But it was a hangout for me. I used to just go hang out there when I was writing in my office or something. And I was there one time, and I get a call from Dizzy Gillespie, who I knew, who I played opposite. Now, Nicole, you can listen to somebody play a million times, but until you play with them for a week or 10 days and play the same songs every night, you don't know how good they can play, really. You can listen to a record and it'll sound good, but you really can't tell unless you really work with that musician as a musician. So anyhow, I went to the store one time and I get a call from Dizzy Gillespie. It's Dizzy, hey, Terry, he says, listen, James Moody just had a Bell palsy stroke and I'm opening up tonight. Can you come play with me for 10 days? Now, that was wild that he called me because he could have called a whole lot of players in California here. And so, anyhow, before he hung up, I was there because Dizzy and Bird, but those guys, they were my idols,
Yeah.
And so I went and I played with Dizzy for 10 days. Now, I'm going to have to, can I use the language that Dizzy uses? It's foul language.
Okay, go ahead.
But the story, it wouldn't, if I don't use the word, then it's really not powerful enough.
Okay.
Anyhow, I was playing What's New after about the fourth night of playing together. Now, I worked opposite Dizzy, I said, but you don't know what somebody can do. After playing 4 days, he heard the real Terry Gibbs now. Because he's playing with me, we're playing his same songs every night. If whatever changes it was, he's hearing me compose different songs on those chord changes. See, I'm playing What's New this one night. It's quiet. And Dizzy, all the black people love Dizzy. He was like Louis Armstrong. He was the new Louis Armstrong to them.
Yeah.
And so he can get away with anything he wants to do. Now I'm playing What's New. It's real quiet. And I'm about the middle of my second chorus of my jazz chorus, and it was quiet, and all of a sudden I hear, God damn, Terry, you a mother. Now, I didn't know where to look, Nicole. I didn't know where to look, what to do. I got scared because he was just telling me that he thought I was great or whatever, you know. Yeah. But that was Dizzy. So that was Dizzy.
Well, can I ask you this, Terry? You worked with Bill D'Arango, who was one of the first guitarists who played with Charlie Parker. And I have a question about that. Okay, so you mentioned when you went to the military band and in the Army.
Yeah, I was in the Army.
And but before that, you did classical music as well, I guess. Is that right?
Yes, I was a classical xylophone player. I won a contest when I was 12 years old called Major Bowes Amateur, which on radio was bigger than the American Idol.
Right.
That it was bigger on radio than that was, but I hate to say, but the talent was better. For example, one person, Frank Sinatra, won the Major Bowes Amateur Hour. They never had people like Frank Sinatra sing on that other show. So anyhow, I was a classical xylophone player and played timpanis in school, and I played all the percussion instruments, and I thought my folks thought I'd play Carnegie Hall someday as a classical musician, but I played it with Woody Herman's band.
Yeah. Did any of your classical training find its way into your jazz playing?
Oh, my technique? Let me tell you, here's so wild. I played a lot of notes, and so did Bird and so did Diz, but somebody once asked, it could be they could ask Dizzy or Bird, I'm not sure, or I think Oscar Peterson maybe, why do you play so many notes? He says, because I can. And it's not only because you can, it's because you hear it. I get students, but I get people now who want to study with me, and I have them come over my house whenever they play. I never charge them anything because I'm 96 years old now, and I'd like to pass on whatever knowledge I have to anybody who's willing to listen. And the first thing I teach them, what I do is I put on that, you know what Music Minus One is?
Yeah, a backing track, right?
It's just a rhythm section playing songs that you play along with, right? So I put it on and I play for them, and the first thing they try to show me how much technique they have. And the first thing I say to them after that is, let me tell you, the first thing is don't play the instrument, play the song. If you record what we just did, and if you can sing back what you played, then it's good. But if it's just because you're technically showing off, you can't do that on a record. Maybe in person you can get away with it, but you can't get away with it on a record. So don't play the instrument, play the song. And that's what I was, even though I had all that technique, I heard those notes because I heard Dizzy and Bird and Bud Powell. I think maybe I learned more playing like Bud Powell because he didn't have to breathe. You could play long lines on the piano. You could play like 16 bars if you want without taking a breath, you know. Well, you can't do that on trumpet and saxophone.
Right. Oh, how do you teach to play chord changes, Terry? What's the way?
Well, I'll tell you how let me tell you, Nico, you really can't teach jazz, but you can tell. But here's how I taught. I used to get people from the symphonies come and ask me to study with me, to ask me how they can learn how to play jazz. And I said, okay, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take the song, let me see, How High the Moon, because the chord changes are easy. They fall into each other. They follow each other. Very easy chord changes. And I said, I want you to go home and I want you to write a song, write out a chorus on that song, and then we're going to but work on it, and then we'll take it apart when you come up the next week. Then they come there. I tell them, I'll play piano for them and they'll play it. I said, why these notes don't make sense? They don't belong here. Then I said, okay, then we'll go home again, same tune. I would do that for 16 weeks. And then the 16 weeks, I played piano for them. And I said, I'll play a few choruses of the things that you learned on your own, you know, that you heard in your own head. And they'd play, they wouldn't play good, but they play but they play decent, you know. If they were talented, if they were really talented, they would really play very good, you know. But that's the way I taught jazz. And I don't think you could teach jazz.
Terry, in your book, it says that you mentioned that you could play any of Lester Young's solos, his tenor solos.
Because when I was a young kid, Tiny Khan, who I grew up with, who was unknown to most people because he died at 29 years old. And when I tell you he wrote arrangements without ever taking a lesson, and he played drums without taking a lesson, and he was better than anybody. I'm going to mention a few names. Well, I'll not mention one because he's more famous than Al Cohen and many albums of well-known ranges. But Johnny Mandel, who wrote The Shadow of Your Smile and a whole bunch of other songs, we all grew up together. So, and you talk to Johnny Mandel, ask him how he learned to arrange. He says he'll tell you that his biggest inspiration was Tiny Khan, who never took a lesson.
Wow!
And we grew up together, Tiny and I, and we both played the same style of drums, and that's why I hired guys like Mel Lewis, who played in my dream band.
You memorized all those solos from Lester Young. Were there other solos that you memorized? Did you know Charlie Parker's records as well? Did you know?
I can sing them all. I can't play them. I can sing a lot of them.
So you did learn a ton of solos.
Well, what I did was memorize in my head, but not on the instrument. Not on the instrument. When I listened to them, you know when you're young learning, you steal a lick there's a lick that Dizzy Gillespie played that became famous. It went I think he did it on maybe on what do you call it? Night in Tunisia. I'm not sure it was a break he took. He did that. I learned that. I memorized that thing, but I did it different. I would go, do you? I would use the syncopation and the timing, but add my own notes in different places,
Right.
So that's how I learned,
You played with Charlie Parker for a month. Did you ever chat with him about music?
Oh, yeah, we talked. Yeah, but Bird, he was a very intelligent guy,
Yeah.
and you could talk about anything with Bird.
Yeah.
He was very humble and very beautiful. I'll tell you, he treated me as if I played as good as him,
Yeah, well, what kind of things did you guys talk about?
I don't know. We didn't hang out much because after the thing, he had friends of his own coming to place. It wasn't that he was my friend, because he had his own friends and I had my own friends. So after we got done playing, I in a dressing room when the other band was playing, once in a while I would. I wouldn't. I don't think I asked questions about music. I didn't ask him how you do this because whatever you tell me, I couldn't do anyhow. Whatever the answer would be, Nicole,
Yep.
Forget about it. It's something I would have to. It would be like you telling me, here are the notes of the flight above me. You didn't tell me, and then I have to go out and play it.
Yeah. How did people learn tunes back then? Did they learn tunes off records, or did they learn it from each other?
Well, listen, you got to understand that the people who were kids who became good beboppers,
Yeah.
the guys I grew up with, like Connie Condoli, you know these names?
Yes.
Lou Levy, you know that name?
Yeah.
Okay, these are my closest friends. Tiny Khan, of course, Manny Alban, Al Cohen. These are people that were all my close friends in the 50s,
Right.
And then, but another thing, from 1953, I had a little group with this girl called Terry Pollard. Did you ever hear Terry Pollard play?
I have. I've seen you on YouTube playing with her, and you guys,
Let me tell you something, though, about that
awesome.
girl. In 1953, when that video was done, it was a television show, and everything had to be short. But when you heard her play piano in a club, and when you heard I let her play vibes in a club every night, we did that thing. I let her play 15 choruses on vibes, and sometimes I wouldn't want to follow her. There's not a vibe player living today, Nicole. I honestly tell you, there's not a vibe player living today, and some good young ones who could swing as hard as Terry Pollard could back in 1953. I'll tell you, she took Horace Silver's place in my band playing piano. And let me tell you, there's a thing that I have on my music stand. I'm on the cover of a magazine.
Yep.
And when you do an interview like with you, and if you were like transcribing and writing the whole thing down, it's not you, but somebody else takes something out of it to make a headline. And the headline they put, which was perfect, which I said, you're only as good as what's behind you. Meaning, you're only as good as the piano player, drummer, and bass player that you're playing with.
Right.
If they don't play good, then you can't play good. Now, for 4 years, I had the same group on the road. So I never got to see any of my friends because we worked about 50 weeks a year. I was very hot those days. I won the Downbeat Award, a magazine here, that all the club owners thought, it was all clubs those days, not concerts. All the club owners thought if you won, you were God,
Yeah.
You were the best living. And let me tell you something, Nicole, even though I won the Downbeat Award 5 times in a row.
That's right.
It was a popularity poll, and I knew it. For some reason, God gave me the knowledge to know when I was good, when I was bad, and when somebody knew it, when they would. My first write-up I ever got, I can read it to you. I have it here.
I saw it. It was in the book. It was I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion about critics, jazz critics, music critics?
Well, I'll tell you, most of them are ex-musicians who couldn't make it in jazz. And they really, some of them do know, most of them don't. The guy who wrote that article, and I'll just say the first thing. I'll just mention. I won't read it, but I'll tell you. on this. It was my first write-up I ever got. And about with Bill Durango, I was with Bill Durango, and the first 3 paragraphs about me was saying how great I was. Terry Gibbs, the newest things, and do this, the great, and then he said at the end, but the only thing he has to worry about are sticklers. Now, do you know what sticklers are?
No.
Neither do I. And what? And if I'm that great, what do I have to worry about anything anyhow, right?
Yeah.
As great as he says, so I know, God, he's full of shit. He don't know what the hell he's talking about. so then let me say, when you play clubs, you always want a good review because every time you play the club, the writer would from whatever city you were playing would always come in opening night when nothing is right. You haven't got the sound of the club in your ear, the mics aren't working right, but they always come in that night.
Yep.
But you always want a good review because the review would come out on Thursday, and if it was a good review, Friday and Saturday would be packed.
Right.
You always have a decent crowd Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but when you got a good review Friday and Saturday and Sunday, you couldn't even get in the club, you know.
Now, bebop was not. I mean, now it's classic, but back in the day, I mean, it was not something that was accepted. And there's a wild story where you and Bill Durango were to play in Chicago at a place called Jump Town.
We got fired the first day.
And after your first song, you were fired.
We were fired. We had no money to get back. Bill Durango was beautiful. The money never meant anything. He would just get us all rooms at this, I think it was the Alexandria Hotel in Chicago. And we all had rooms, but after we got fired, we all had to move into one room. And then he had to find money to get it back. You know, but when you're a kid, I think I was, I was 22 maybe. Music is all you cared about. You didn't care if you slept on the floor. You just wanted to play, you know. That's all we cared about. But the good thing that came out of that is that Tiny Carr was on that job too. So Tiny and I were there, my best friend, but he couldn't sleep in any of the beds because he weighed 300 pounds, and there was no room for him and then somebody else. He looked like a submarine. He was, when I tell you, Nicole, he was the more talented than all of us. When I was in the Army, when we used to go 15, 16 years old, we used to go down to my basement. I had a drum set, and we'd play to records of Count Basie. We knew every Count Basie. We took turns playing drums. And then when I went in the Army, with the dance band, there were 2 arrangements of Count Basie. They used to have what they call stock arrangements that were sold, that they had big band arrangements. But these 2 of Count Basie were not there. I think it was Jump the Blues Away and Queer Street, I think, those 2. So I told Tiny that they didn't have them, and without ever taking a lesson, he transcribed both of them and sent me the music to those records.
Wow.
He was at 29. He wrote for every band. He wrote for Woody. He died when he was 29 years old.
Wow. Okay, let's jump around because while I have you, I mean, this is such a privilege to talk to you, and we can talk about so many amazing things. Can I jump around? Let's talk about pianists.
What do you want?
Let's talk about pianists for a second. Now, you mentioned that Bud Powell was in a class of his own, and did you see him play live as well? I mean, you did, obviously. You saw him.
Yeah, we played together. I played together.
And you played with Bud. Okay, can you tell me about that?
You know, they used to have Birdland always had a Monday night jam session where whoever owned the place, you know, whatever ran the music there, they would call like 6, 7 nights to play on Monday, like a jam session style. You never knew who was going to play until you got there. And a lot of time, Bud Powell was always hired because Bud Powell, unfortunately, was mentally not there. He was mentally. He was in an insane asylum for a little while, and so he would be a lot of them. And he you know, here's how I can put it with myself and Bud Powell. They had a musicians poll one time, where musicians voted for their favorite musicians, And Bud Powell, I remember Kenny Clark voted for me. So Bud Powell liked the way I played, So that made me feel good.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Let me jump around here. You mentioned Al Haig is also another great pianist, right?
Yeah, he was the first.
Tell me about Al Haig.
I didn't know Al that much. He also died at an early age, but he was like, he was a bebop. He really could play with Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. He was that good. I heard him when I came out of the Army, playing with those guys, and he was that great. But I never played with Al Haig. I didn't know much about Al.
Now, someone a little bit older is Art Tatum, and did you see him live? Did you ever interact with him?
Yes. I tell you, I was very famous for a strange thing. Tiny Khan and I were, when we were about 16 years old, 17 years old. You had to, by those days, you had to be 18 years old to get in the club where there was liquor. And there was a place called Cafe Society where Art Tatum was playing, and the piano was on the floor. And so Tiny and I were about 16 years old, but he was big. Like I said, when we were 16, if you know these names, Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre,
okay,
that's what we looked like walking down the street. That big, and I was that little. But anyhow, we were about 15, 16, and we made everybody wore hats those days. It was the days of wearing hats, and we made mustaches on our face so we could look older. And they let us in the club. And I don't think they would have cared any. They just wanted our money, So we went down to the arcade, and after the job was over, there were about maybe 10 people left in the place, and all went over to the piano. And Tiny and I hadn't left yet, because we would be the last one to leave, because just looking at the musicians was something big to us,
Yeah.
Seeing them. And so Art started to play. So we went over to the piano. I was on the top end of the piano, and he made one of his runs that he made. If you heard Art Tatum on our record, hit me right in the balls, hit me right in the crotch. And I got well known all around Brooklyn. Did you hear that Art Tatum hit Terry Gibbs in the balls? Yeah, well, it was like I was famous for it. Was that nice to become famous for that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Lester Young.
By the way, did you interview John Williams last week or something?
No, that was an April Fool's thing, Terry, and everyone fell for it. Was everyone fell for that?
By the way, he was a good jazz piano player.
Did you know him?
Yeah, I met him when I first moved to California. Shelley managed to introduce me to him.
Ah, okay.
He called me. He called me. You want to hear?
Yes, I do want to hear it. Yeah.
He was doing a movie. I don't do what they call studio music. I don't like to do studio musician dates. I don't like, even though it pays a lot of money, and I play all the percussion. It's no fun for me to stand there for hours and play 2-4 notes or something, Yeah. But I got a call from John one time. They were doing Home Alone 2. And there was a chase scene. He had an idea. There was a chase scene. He wrote this thing for 100-piece orchestra, and he wanted Airmail Special, the thing that Benny Goodman made famous.
Yep.
He wanted it played, and I recorded. I played with Benny, and he wanted as many people that played with Benny that knew that feel. So Louis Bellson was available. I was available, and Abe Most, a very good crowd player who made a lot of records doing those things, and a piano player, Mike Lang, who could read Fight a Bumbly at sight. I mean, these guys were studio musicians, great guys. And I don't do it, but they paid me, when I tell you, for doing that, they paid me a fortune of money. I think $10,000 to come and play one
fortune,
song.
Yeah. Wow, incredible.
Yeah, especially that time. Yeah, especially that time. But one of the thing is, we played the heck. We had so much fun playing it, very good musicians playing the jazz thing. But they never used it in the movie picture. I would love to have heard it with that 100-piece. It was like it would make sense with the chasing, cars running running after each other.
Yeah.
And we played, and the 100-piece or whatever they were doing behind us.
Yeah.
So, but John Williams loved jazz, and he knew jazz.
Terry, what's your opinion about music theory and how it's taught? you are the way you learned is
I was taught by a man who played in the symphony. But you know what? It was wild that this usually people who play in symphonies who play percussion don't know chord changes. I mean, they
cannot
they
improvise.
know
Yeah.
they can read anything, but they don't know. But my teacher taught me chord changes. Freddie Albright, and he really was. He got $3 in 19. Well, I was only 10 years old, maybe earlier, young when I started to study with him. That had to be about 1934, because 1936 when I won the Major Rose Amateur Hour, I went and studied with him. He taught me technique, but later on, I developed my own style with shorter mallets, and Freddie used to make them for me. And then that's my biggest royalty now is my mallets put out by the Zildjian Company.
You talked about something interesting there. He taught you chord changes, and it's absolutely true that, I mean, in the 20th century, even now, classical musicians don't really improvise.
No, that's not what they study. They unfortunately, especially violin players, 99% of them can't get that jazz feel. You know, do you ever hear my record I ever did, which was maybe 10 years ago, maybe something like that, called Broadway and 52nd Street, the music of the bebop era? You ever heard that record?
Oh, I must check it out.
It's now I used 32 strings, 3 French horns, and James Moody, Nicholas Payton, and Tom Renier on piano, and Jeff Howell on drums. It was an idea, but the strings don't play like strings; they play like the Dream Band.
Right.
The 4 rangers I hired, the qualification was they had to know bebop.
Right.
They had to know the Dream Band. They had to know how to write the strings. That's what the qualification for the 3 arrangers. And Mick Flory, who had super sax and played my big band, of course he knew it. And Howie Sher, a trumpet player, he knew it. And everybody I hired knew strings, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, who knew how to the qualifications. And you got to hear that, Howard. It's really great. It actually was on the jazz charts #1 for about 3-4 weeks in a row, maybe more than that.
Terry, when you write music, which comes first, the melody or the chords?
If I hear something, then I put the chord changes to it. But I like to sit down and play chord changes and whistle or sing to it, you know. But here's how I've written a lot of my songs. You know, I've written about 200 compositions, and I'm going to tell you in a minute what my son is doing right now, which is a real big compliment to me. If I was riding in my car, I always carry a piece of paper in the car. And I would sing something, you know, music was always in my head. I would listen to radio or something, the jazz station. Then I'd stop and I'd hear something of my own. And while writing, I'd write down 8 bars. Because then I'd write it down on a piece of music paper. And I put it in my piano bench. And I did it a lot of times. When I had to record, I go to my piano bench and see what material I wrote. Some of it I played it sounded like a piece of garbage to me. What the hell what was I thinking about when I write that? And some I wrote then I sit down at the piano and then I think about it, and then I find the chord changes to what I wrote and then put chord changes to the rest. But a lot of times I sit down at the piano and just play different. I love chord changes. I love melodic chord changes. And all my bebop songs, in fact, you know the name Arthur Hamilton?
No.
He wrote, what the heck is that? One of the most famous songs. Cry Me a River. You ever hear that song?
Okay.
You heard that, right?
Okay.
Well, he wrote a lot of songs. But that's he heard some of my songs and called me and asked me to write the lyrics to something. So he came to my house and he wrote a few lyrics in them to my song. So I've had 2 or 3 writers now write lyrics to some of my songs. Bobby Troop, you know that name?
Yes.
Well, he wrote lyrics to a few of my songs, and so I got lyrics to about 10, 12 of my songs now. But I always wrote for myself for my quartet. most of the songs. I wrote about 200. And let me tell you what my son is doing now, because this will knock you out. Not many people know this because it's all new. He's doing this is about his 12th album he's doing for his record company. The guy who owns the record company, loves him. He's doing an album recording all my original songs that he loved of mine when he was growing up. And he's got 4 different piano players, 4 different bass players, and I'm going to give you who's playing on who's what.
Yeah.
He's recorded 3/4 of the album already. He's recorded Kenny Barron and Buster Williams and himself playing drums. You know who they are, Kenny Barron and Buster Williams?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's one thing. They're playing 5 songs. He's Jeff Keezer and Christian McBride have recorded 5 songs. And Chick Corea and Ron Ricardo have recorded 5 songs already.
Wow.
Now he's coming out to California in May, recorded Patrice Rushen, and Larry Golden playing organ. He'll play organ with Patrice, and him playing drums. And they're recording all original of my songs, 18 of my songs.
Wow, that's great. That's fantastic.
And the album is called Songs from My Father. Horace Silver has an album called Songs for My Father. Well, this is Songs from My Father.
Very good. That's fantastic. Terry, you're Jewish, and I wanted to ask you, how did that affect your training and your development as a musician? Did that have...
that music, the minor key, I think that if I started out writing in a major key, I went into a minor key and a release in the middle. That Jewish music, Stacey, I have an album that Alice Coltrane played on me called Terry Gibbs Plays Jewish Melodies in Jazz Time.
Yep, 1963 with Mercury.
Yeah. And you know what's wild? On the album, we just finished working opposite John Coltrane. I introduced her to John. I was a matchmaker on that marriage.
That's right, yeah.
And anyhow, all Jewish music, you have all those Mid-Eastern runs. You have all those... I had my brother who was probably the Art Blakey of the Jewish drums. He was the best Jewish drummer you ever heard in your life. These are all really people who escaped from Russia who played on the record date. They didn't need any music. They heard it and played it. You know, they were like you jazz musicians who went to a jam session. We all knew the songs, you know. And so on this record, Alice Coltrane, I was a Jew and she was the black person, and she wiped me out on the record. She played better than I did, playing Jewish music, because he played all those runs.
Yep. Yeah.
He was great. Alice Coltrane recorded 4 albums with me.
Right. Yeah.
I had 3 girl piano players. Pat Moran, who was a monster piano player, also.
That's incredible. I'm going to jump around. I wanted to ask, these are some historical questions. I have a good friend. He's a jazz guitarist, Christian Miller. He's very great. He gave some questions to me I wanted to ask, which is, at that time in the 40s and the 50s, was it common for people to have record players? Was that rare to have one? And also, did people practice with metronomes back then?
No, I never practiced with a metronome. I never knew about one but metronome. I had a record player, not when I was a kid. When I grew up, I could afford a record player. I'm not sure if they were expensive or not. But you got to understand, my family all escaped from Russia. And so their upbringing was completely different than my father was a band leader who did 3 on a Saturday and Sunday afternoon. Sunday he had 2-3 weddings or bar mitzvahs, and hired different musicians, all who escaped from Russia also, who could play, who played so great. It was they came. Whoever he hired never came with any music. They all knew that music. They brought it over from Russia. All those minor songs, you know. And on the album that Jewish album I did, besides the Jewish band and all the things that I played, the music that I played, most of it once again was things I learned with playing with my father with those Jewish musicians. I wrote a few of the songs on there because I know that feel. I grew up with it.
Right. Now, let me ask you about, I was really fascinated by your close working and personal relationship with Buddy Rich, one of the greatest, if not greatest, drummers of all time. And reading your book...
You read those chapters, right? You read the chapters,
I did,
right, about Buddy Rich?
Yeah, and I really was impressed, and you had a close relationship with him. You played at his funeral, and
there were two Buddy Riches. The one you saw on television, or who became a band leader and was hard to work for. And let me tell you about that.
Yep.
Buddy Rich was hard to work for later on in life because he was used to having Ray Brown to play with, and Sweets Edison, and Cal Basie, and now he had a bunch of young kids that were learning how to play jazz, because most of them had that rock feel, you know?
Okay.
So he was hard on them. But sitting in my house here with me, he was one of the guys, you know. I come to kiss my ass, you know. He was just one of my friends. But I played his funeral. That was the hardest thing I ever did in my life.
Yeah.
That was like a Broadway show, that funeral, if you read about it.
Yeah. There's a couple of Buddy Rich questions I had, and one thing was, is it true that he never practiced? Is that a myth?
Never practiced. You know, he broke his left arm one time. We were playing baseball, and he broke his left arm, and I don't think he played for he had in a cast for 3-4 months, and we got to Chicago, and I was up in his dressing room with somebody else in the band, I forget who, and he says, "Hey, I can't make this. I'm taking this cast off." And they're like, because he was playing one hand, playing greater than any other drummer with just one hand.
Yeah.
And we said to him, "You're crazy. You can't take the cast off without a doctor." Because I heard also that if you take the cast off, your hands can fall down and break again.
Yeah.
He was like, he didn't care about anything. Nothing bothered Buddy. But he would go out and spend $1 million even though he didn't have it. He took that off, and we heard him play on the pad for about 10 minutes. He came down and played with both hands. And I swear to you, I never heard anybody play any solos in my life like that.
Oh, did you?
He was a freak. That's the only thing I could do. He was a freak. Technically, he was a freak. And I'll tell you what he could do that maybe a lot of drummers and musicians don't realize. When he played out, if they were playing a song, and he played like a 10-minute drum solo, you knew when to come in on the first beat of the song he played. The 10 minutes. You know, Buddy Rich was a tap dancer. He was a very good tap dancer. You ever know that?
No.
Yeah, there's a video. There is a video on YouTube that I think you can put on with that thing where you see with Buddy Rich and myself playing together when I was a young kid. There was a whole show. If you put the whole show on, I can't forget what it was called. He tap danced. He danced. There was a guy called Louis Dupron, who was one of the top choreographers for movies those days. And we did this movie short, and Louis Dupron and Buddy Rich danced. And Buddy Rich was a very good dancer.
Right. Okay, if with Buddy Rich, a question I have is it true that he could not read music at all?
Not at all. Let me tell you, I'll tell you what he used to do. You played a song once, first of all, you played a song without him at the drums. The band would play it once, maybe twice the most, then he'd sit down and he'd play with, and you swear to God that you thought he played it now for like 10 years now. One time, he called me up after he had one of his heart attacks, and he's putting the band together back. He said, "Okay, now he's putting the band. Hey, Terry, I got to have an arrangement. Don't be that way, your arrangement." I said, "Buddy, I don't give my arrangements to anybody." That's what I wasn't giving to anybody. You can't have it. I don't give it to anybody. He said, Terry, beg me. I said, "Okay, I'll give it to you if you let me rehearse the band playing it." He said, "Yeah, we're rehearsing at the Rose Hotel. Come down." So I went down and Don Menza was writing jazz rock charts for the band because they were doing a lot of that those days.
Okay.
And so I had to follow him, his jazz rock charts. Now the introduction to "Don't Be That Way" and I'll sing it. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. So So I tap it off to the band. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, gentlemen, wait a second. You got to lay back.
Yeah.
You got to lay back on that. You got to lay back. And so I said, let's try it again. And I tapped it off. Once again, he did and he couldn't stand it. But he heard the record. So he didn't want the band to be embarrassed, and he'd be embarrassed having such kind of band. That he went and sat behind the drums, and I tapped it off. And I swear to God, he played the arrangement like he'd been playing it for months now.
Wow!
Because he heard it on the record, he knew it from the record.
Right.
And the band, the feel became different. Let me tell you, whenever Buddy Rich sat in, if he sat in with the Oscar Peterson trio, it sounded like the Buddy Rich trio. When he sat in with the Count Basie, it sounded like the Buddy Rich band.
Yeah. I would love to mention Stan Levy, who I discovered, from my interview with Angela Levy, who I think is an incredible drummer. And actually, were you friends?
He worked for Stan Levy. Played for me out here. If I had to mention that my two favorite drummers I play with out in California, with a little band, it would be Stan Levy and Frank Butler. Back east was Art Blakey, and he was my favorite drummer to play with. He worked for me.
Why was he your favorite drummer?
Because he gave you that time when you don't have to. When you're playing a jazz chorus, and there's something who's playing behind you. If the piano player is holding the notes, not leaving me open spaces, I can hear that. That if you hear it, that bugs you. When you don't hear anything back there, that bugs you. You can really think of what you're doing,
Yeah.
And Stan Levy, no matter what tempo, he gave you that time. He was one of my favorite drummers to play with. He never got in my way, ever. He never got in anybody's way when he played. That's why everybody wanted to play with him.
Okay, I'm going to ask you now, Terry, a series of fun questions. I'm going to ask you your top 3, and I'm going to ask a particular instrument, okay? And we're going to talk about bebop here. So who are the top 3 bebop jazz guitarists, in your opinion?
Let me see. Barney Kessel, who I play. I got to use people I played with,
Yeah.
It's like I said, Barney Kessel. I think in a different way, Wes Montgomery, in a different way. Of course, Charlie Christian was the number one.
Yeah. Oh,
so I'll use those 3 names.
Who are the best bebop jazz drummers, in your opinion?
I'll tell you, out in California, once again, I lived in New York for a long time, moved out in California. Do you ever hear the name Frank Butler?
Yes.
Frank Butler and Stan Levy out here. Back east, it was Art Blakey, who worked for me also, and Charlie Smith.
Right.
Those 2 drummers.
Wasn't it? I found it interesting in your book. Benny Goodman was kind of shocked at Art Blakey's playing.
That's because that's not his style of drumming. He likes a Louis Bellson style, though.
Yeah.
He likes an instrumentalist to play the instrument like the instruments play. Like he thought Buddy Rich played too loud.
Yep.
So
he did. Okay.
Benny was out there himself. Benny was in left field.
Yeah. There's a really hilarious chapter. Benny.
Those are my favorite chapters writing about because not only when I was Benny Goodman growing up, I used to hear stories about him.
Yep.
When I came out of I'd hear, and they sound so far-fetched to me.
Yep.
It's like somebody be telling you, Nick Cole, this guy story about a guy with a pair of black shoes, and you told to somebody who told to somebody who told. By the time it went to the 18th person, it was a red sweater. Stories get all kind of screwed up. So I used to hear these stories about Benny Goodman. They sounded so far-fetched that nobody could beat that out there. Until I joined him and found out how completely out there he was.
There was that. There's such a funny story in the book where he never talked to some people in the band, and on a TV show, the host surprised him and had a sudden banter with him and said, "Can you introduce your band?"
Let me tell the story. Teddy Wilson was with. We did it. It was 37-week show with Teddy Wilson.
Yep.
Teddy Wilson was the same kind of way. And then we had to do the Ken Murray show.
Yep.
We had to do another TV show. So he always had somebody, John Hammond, somebody hired Bernie Layton, one of the biggest studio piano players who had like blondish and light hair,
Right.
and was white as you can get. And we rehearsed, you know how you rehearse like 5 times, 10 times a day. You do your song, and we just go off to the right.
Yep.
Didn't even talk. Song over to the right. To the song over to the right. So now it comes showtime, and Ken Murray got the sign, which is called to stretch. When they give you that thing, to stretch means we need more time. So talk to Benny Goodman. And so we play our song, and we're ready to go off to the right. And old Ken said, "Hey, Benny." Now Benny had to walk over to him. Now walking to the left threw Benny a curve. He didn't know why he was going that way, or he's always going the other way. So he went over and looked at Ken Murray like he was crazy. He said, "What do you want?" He said, "Who's in the band?" He had to, talk to Benny. So Benny looked at me, and he first he called me Gibbs, I think. Terry Gibbs. And he knew who I was. And he mentioned everybody. He got to a piano player who he never said hello to the whole time we did rehearsal. Never said hello to him. Never talked to him. He said on piano, Teddy Wilson. And we all made a double take looking at wait a minute, who's playing piano? Teddy Wilson. Make up a name, Irving Schwartz. Any name, but Teddy Wilson. I mean, this man, Teddy Wilson was famous.
It was on television, right? I mean, that was pretty fun.
On television. And Teddy was very famous. And we just finished doing a 37-week show where we were on television. Television show he did, and Teddy, and we were featured. We played 2, 3 songs. It's also on YouTube. And also that band that played on Ken Murray's show, I think, the Kate Smith show, is on television also.
Well, one of the wildest things that you mentioned was the fact that he practiced naked. I couldn't picture that.
Yeah, but Don Elliott, when he wanted me to go on the road with him after I had my band, we were playing at this club. I had guys who I didn't want to lose. Don Elliott, who played mellophone and played, that's where the vibe duet started with Don and myself, and a drummer called Sid Balkan. So I made him hire him if he wanted me to go with him. And I went there. We were there, and Don Elliott needed some money. And so this must have been maybe in the afternoon sometime. And we said, let's go to Benny's room because we'll stay in the same hotel, and you can ask him, So I knocked on the door a few times. He says, "Who's there?" I said, "Hey, Benny, it's Terry." I hear he didn't say anything. He's practicing the clarinet. I said, "Hey, Benny, it's Terry Gibbs." I had to bang hard because he's practicing. I said, "Benny," he says, "Open the door, it's open." So I said, okay. So we walked in, and he's standing there practicing clarinet naked. I didn't know where to look. I think I looked at the picture that was hanging there. And Don Elliott, who never knew Benny, I worked with Benny, but Don Elliott, who didn't know him, didn't know what to say. He asked me for money.
Was he a prankster, or was this really just being out there?
Oh, yeah, he was foggy. He was very foggy. Let me tell you, he called everybody Pops.
That's right.
He could remember everybody's name.
It was Pops.
He couldn't remember anybody's name, but that was it. You know the wildest thing? When I was with him, I once asked him, "What do you think about Harry James?" And I didn't know him.
Oh.
I said, "What do you think? What do you mean, Harry James? Cherry River, he played. He played
sing,
your band.
sing, yeah.
Harry James." I didn't know him. See, he called everybody Pops. He didn't know who I was talking about.
Yeah.
But he loved my last name, Gubenko. He called me Gubenko till I asked for a raise. Then it went back to Pops.
Yeah, but you also, you were very fair because you also said he was an incredible musician at the same time.
Oh, he was
one of the greats.
Most fun to play. It swing you from where I am to where you are.
Yeah.
He could swing you off the stage.
Right.
He was a hard swing player. Well, sometimes he played a lot of the same things, but he sure could play.
Yeah. Now, what about top 3 jazz bebop trumpet players?
Okay, in my opinion, I think Dizzy Gillespie and Clifford Brown and maybe Fats Navarro.
Okay, what about top...
Miles Davis, you could ask. What about Miles Davis?
Miles Davis. What about, for bebop, top 3 for bass players?
And I think the top, to start with, I think Ray Brown, without a doubt. Andy Simpkins, who played in my band, was great, and a guy called George DeVivier. But I also liked I forget his name now, a war fan who played with Duke Ellington. Jimmy Blanton. He's the bass players that I played with were Oscar Pettiford and Ray Brown. They were the two top bass players. But Jimmy Blanton.
You played with Curly Russell too.
Yeah, but see, Curly Russell wasn't harmonically as good as the other two guys.
Okay.
He couldn't play. He could play in the rhythm, but he couldn't play solos like they were. They could do everything, Ray Brown and Oscar Pettiford.
Okay. Actually, one quick question is, there's a jazz educator who's gone quite popular because of YouTube, and people are rediscovering him. He's a jazz pianist, Barry Harris, and I was wondering he's...
Oh, he's one of the best piano players ever. He's on the best record, my favorite record I ever made, called Popsicle Course.
Could you talk about that?
Barry worked for me one time for a month at a club, and right after we played that club, we went in the next day, and this guy, Don Schlitten, who wanted me to do a record date for me, I set up that date. And Barry Harris, he brought in Sam Jones.
Alan Dawson.
Alan Dawson from Boston. And in one day, we recorded all these songs. That was the best, it was probably my best playing I've done and the most fun I had playing. But that Barry Harris is one of my favorite piano players and one of my favorite people.
Right. By
the way, if you ask Barry Harris, who was the best piano player that came out of Detroit, there was Tommy Flanagan and a whole bunch of guys.
Yeah.
He'll tell you Terry Pollard. He'll mention Terry Pollard to you.
Wow. Okay, so how about jazz? Saxophone is a lot, but maybe alto and tenor.
On tenor? Well, I like people for certain different things. I loved, first of all, I played with the four brothers, had Stan Getz, Zeus Sims, and Al Cohen. I think when he died, I forget the date, I think my favorite tenor player could have been Al Cohen, because he played the most melodic. But I also loved Dexter Gordon. I loved Sonny Stitt when he played tenor. And of course, Lester Young.
Yeah.
That's the style of tenor playing I love better than anything,
Right.
Even though I like Coleman Hawkins, I loved the style Lester Young was my.
What's the difference between Coleman Hawkins and like Lester Young?
Well, the articulation. What's like the difference between Charlie Parker and Johnny Hodges, or Charlie Parker and Benny Carter? The articulation and how they played the notes. Well, Coleman Hawkins really could go through chord changes. Great. Look at Body and Soul. Look at that record that he made famous without playing one note of the melody of Body and Soul.
Yeah. What about the alto saxophone for bebop?
Forget about it, Charlie Parker. Yeah. Nobody else.
Nobody else.
Nobody else, Charlie Parker. Because nobody can play as him. I liked other players. I loved Cannonball Adderley. I loved a lot of players. But Charlie Parker was the man.
Can I ask you, Terry, now Sonny Stitt sounds a lot like Charlie Parker. Can you give your opinion about that, Sonny Stitt?
That's why I told you I like Sonny better on tenor saxophone.
Okay.
And Sonny was a good friend of mine. All those guys you mentioned were friends of mine. When I moved to California, there's a picture that's on my. Are you my friend on Facebook at all, Nicole?
I think I added you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Well, if you go to my home page and if you look and scroll down, you see pictures that were done in my house back in the late 50s. I played the Hollywood Jazz Festival with my dream band, and Miles Davis was out here, and Sonny Stitt, and they all a whole bunch with Miles Davis. They were all also Miles Davis was one of my good friends. We both came up about the same time.
Yep.
How I met Miles Davis was pretty wild. Back in about 1949, after I left the Woody Herman Band, I wrote a tune called Peaches that Nat Cole recorded.
That's right, yeah.
And what's the name? Let me tell you. So
George Shearing, I think, covered it too.
Yeah, George Shearing also recorded, and so did Buddy DeFranco. So did I. And so anyhow, Miles came to the club I was working one time in 1949, and he said, "My name is Miles Davis." We were all unknown at the time. He said, "Listen, I heard your song Peaches. I love that song," and that's how we became friends. So anyhow, I got to do the funny stuff. So we were playing the Hollywood Jazz Fest. All these guys are out there. And so I invited them all out to my house. I had a big swimming pool, and I had no furniture at all. I had a piano, vibes, a drum set, 2 vibe sets. It was all in my living room full of music. And so they all came out, and there's a picture of Paul Chambers and Wynton Kelly playing piano and Horace, all sitting around my pool. And Sonny Stitt and Miles Davis, I kept, at that time, I had the dream band, so I lost my voice screaming in front of the band. Hey, I sound like Miles Davis.
Yeah.
And Miles Davis, he was coming out to my house. So I get a call. Everybody's there except Miles. He says, "Hey, motherfucker, where do you live?" I said, "Where are you?" And he says, "I'm here." He says, "I said, you idiot, you're too far. You got to come back." Anyhow, another half hour, an hour passed. I get him go, "Hey, where the fuck are you?" I said, "Where are you?" Like, he tells me the street. I said, you went the other way. You went completely wrong. He called me about 3 times. Yep. He got lost. He never showed up. I don't know if he ever showed up anywhere after that. But everybody else showed up. It was pretty well. We had a great time.
Did Miles Davis write Donna Lee, or was that Charlie Parker?
Let me tell you something. I want you to listen to a thing that's on YouTube. I think it's by Aaron Sachs. Listen to Aaron Sachs. Listen to Tiny Khan, who wrote Tiny's Khan in 1946.
Yeah.
And tell me if you don't think that Donna Lee came from there. I want you to hear that first, and then I don't know if there's always been some kind of talk who wrote it, Miles, or it always sounds more like it would be a kind of a bird kind of a writing than Miles. Because Miles didn't play that many notes, But I want you to listen to Tiny Khan's song called Tiny's Khan on this. Aaron Sachs is the name of the guy who played clarinet. We recorded this tune called Tiny's Khan.
And wasn't that true that I think on one of your recording dates, when Peaches was recorded, somebody else took the credit for it, and that person apologized to you?
It was on Alan Eager. That was my first record date I did with him. It was nervous time for me. I was going to join Tommy Dorsey the next day, so I sent my vibes ahead. So they got me a vibe set. I'm going to record now with Duke Jordan on piano and Max Roach on bass and Curly Russell on bass and Max Roach on drums and Alan. I didn't know any of those guys. And I was scared witless because they were really, they had language now, And it was wild because the name Teddy Reed, you know that name?
Yep. He's a producer.
Teddy Reed really was one of the first guys who recorded Bebop. Yep. He knew music. He later on became Count Basie's manager. But he knew music, and he was running Savoy Records. And so he's the one that hired me for the record day with Alan Eager to do, and Alan liked me anyhow.
Yep.
And, Alan would play whatever song he named, and I knew it, or he played, I played. Anyhow, we were going to do Jordu. And this is 1940. That middle part was completely different than other songs. They were written.
Yeah.
Than the American songbook songs were written. The chord changes were different. So I knew the melody, but I didn't the chord change. So I went over to Duke Jordan, who was stoned out. They were all out of it in those days. And I said, "Hey, Duke, what are the chord changes in the release?" He says, "Man, listen to them." I said, "I'm listening, but I don't know." He says, "Go listen." So I said, "Alan, I don't know the song. I don't know. He won't tell me." He said, "Well, you don't have to play this. Just play the melody with me."
Yeah.
Because everything was short records those days anyhow. So while we're playing, Malin finished his choruses, and he played fours with the drums, and I didn't play. And now we're starting to play the last chorus. Instead, he yelled in the mic, "Hey, wait a second. Where's Terry? I want Terry to play." And he came outside. He came out, and Aaron Leger was the hot tenor player. He was the white tenor player that could play bebop, play with Bird, Miles. He was like the guy that everybody loved before Stan Getz and Al Cole.
Yeah.
He was there first. And so Teddy Reed said, "I want Terry to play." So Alan Leger said, "Listen, he doesn't want to play, you fat idiot. Oh. Go back in the booth or I'm going home."
Oh.
And Alan Eager would have gone home because Alan Egan was rich. He came from a rich family, and he wanted. He said he loved me. He didn't want, I didn't want to play. I didn't want to play. I didn't know it. But I wrote two of the tunes that Alan put his name on, and about 20 years, 30 years later, when Alan sobered up, he sobered his life up.
Yeah.
And I was playing in Florida. He came in and apologized to me for putting his name on those two tunes. I think one is called Beast Kite. I forget the name of the other one.
Let me wind this down with a couple of final questions. One is, okay, well, we talked about chord changes, and just for people, I guess the one question I do really want to ask about learning bebop and learning this kind of music is, how do you get that articulation?
Just listen. What you can do is listen. They try to maybe listen and learn one of their choruses. Maybe learn one of their choruses and see how. And by the way, a lot of their songs, what made bebop songs famous, we took the chord changes off of famous songs like I Got Rhythm, and wrote our own melodies to those songs.
Yeah.
For example, Groove and I is Whispering, an old song, and I was very smart. When I played New York, I played Groove and I. When I played Iowa, they played with the bebop mint, I played Whispering. They knew the song. You play the same choruses on those songs, and so learn one of the choruses from one of their songs, and know what song, the same song, like Whispering. Take Whispering and Groove and High, and learn them both, and learn one of the choruses they play, and see how they are. And try to. You just keep listening. That's all I can tell you. And if you get a chance, play with better players.
Yep.
If you get a chance, if they let you play, always play with better players to learn. That's the way you learn. If you play somebody who doesn't play as good, then you're not learning anything. When I play with Charlie Parker and I don't follow him, I learned. I learned maybe I should go home.
Now, you mentioned with Duke Jordan, he said listen because he didn't provide you the chords. What was interesting is when you were working with Terry Pollard, she, in a way, there was something like that happened because you were asking her to play
she had no chord changes at all.
Yeah, you asked her to play a minor 7-flat-5 chord, and she did.
She didn't know what it was.
And wait,
that's how I auditioned.
Now that's okay. So my question is, what's up with Terry Pollard in that situation? How come she didn't know?
She was one of the most talented people who ever lived. One of the most talented. At 23 years old, at 23, she was as good as Horace Silver or anybody who was playing piano at that time, and played as good as vibes as Bill Jackson or myself or anybody who was playing vibes at that time.
Yeah. So she didn't know any of the theory or anything.
No, but when I hired you, she was with Thad Jones, who was unknown at that time, with Elvin Jones and Billy Mitchell. They were unknown people. All she knew is Thad Jones' songs, his bebop songs that he wrote.
Yeah.
She didn't know Stardust. She didn't know what that meant. Yeah, she was just that talented,
I can kind of understand if somebody is not able to label something, but they can still play the harmony. Is that something that? So that's a bigger question I have is, did you speak in the language of chord symbols, and did everyone in the bebop era, when you're talking to a musician in the 40s, so if you said C major 7, D minor 7, those are terms they would have known and used?
Every musician who was a good bebop player knew whatever chord change I would tell them, they had the technique to go with playing bebop, or they wouldn't have been that good. They wouldn't have been that famous or that good. They became famous because they were good. You only become famous. You only become a famous great baseball player if you can hit 400 home runs out of the park.
So Terry Pollard was the exception there in terms of the way she expressed herself.
But she learned little by little.
Yeah.
She started to learn.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story with things. She couldn't read music at all. I did a big band date in New York when Terry was my band. I used the same rhythm section, but I took the music on the road to teach her. I got the arrangements from the guys, the piano parts, and I took them on the road because we went on the road for a few months, and I had the music. So I would show what's going to happen here, what's going to happen here. And when we got to the record date, whatever song I pulled out, she may have pulled out that song. Maybe had music turned backwards. She didn't know, backwards or forwards. She didn't know because she couldn't read. She may have had the wrong song up in front of her while we were playing.
Yeah.
She really was that talented,
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
Most of the bebop players that became all the people that we talked about, like Sonny Stitt and Paul Chamber, whatever, they were all new chord changes, backwards and forwards.
Okay.
Because when I would write songs, I would write the music. I would write D-7 flat and 5 into G7.
What about Terry? What about the weirder ones like the two extra 2 5s and because some of the like if you take
I don't know that language. I hate that language. You see that's new teaching in the school.
Yeah.
I just said it like it is.
Okay.
It's a D-7 flat 5.
Yeah.
And you know something? I wrote a book that never sold. It was made for Vine, but the part where I taught harmony and theory, basic harmony and theory, I teach you how to learn scales, learn the chords by 1, 3, 5. And in my book, repetition. If you teach somebody something, if I tell you right now that I'm going to tell you 5 times that D-7 flat 5 is D, F, A flat, C,
yep.
Right? If I tell you that, D, F, A flat, C, D. If I write it down, put it in music, write it down, or notate it, do it 5 times on every page, on every chord, and the same thing. By the time you get to the 4th page of from C to F, like cycle, whatever it is, you'll know what to do.
Yeah.
You'll know that it's 1, 3, minus 5, 7. 1, minus 3 of the notes. It's all built on a C scale.
Yeah.
So you'll know what it is. But if I just tell you D, F, A flat, C. D, F, A flat, C. What is it?
D-7 flat 5.
Right. Yeah, okay. If I keep telling you repetition over and over and over, you'll remember it. And that's how you'll learn. But I don't like that. I don't understand
the newest stuff. Well, what about if you know, then if you're going to practice going from a chord to another chord, how do you add all those extra notes? Is it passing notes, chromatic?
Well, you have to know what other chords and notes that fit. You see, there are passing tones.
Can you land on any note, Terry, in the chord? Is that fine, or are there certain rules? No.
Well, the note that you land on the chord should be part of the melody that you're composing, you're playing.
Yeah.
You just don't play a note to play a note because a D-7 flat and 5 has an A flat. You don't play the A flat or a flat and 5th. You don't play that note because it's in the chord. You don't have to. If you hear something with that note, then you play it. That's why I say don't play the instrument, play the song.
Well, I mean, incredible. I mean, what an incredible conversation with a real master. And
well, you can call me back. We can do more if you want.
Yeah, let's really do that, and we can really get to that.
Well, you read my whole book now, so did you enjoy the book?
I love it.
Very anecdotal. They're my stories about those people. Everybody got the. I tell every musician right now alive. I just talked to somebody. Who did I talk to? I said. I talked to a piano player that actually became a rich man. He bought 5 subways. He had seven subways. He bought them, but he was a great piano player who played for. He worked at the lounge where I met my wife, best jazz club. Every great jazz musician worked there, and he accompanied them. He had the trio there.
Yeah.
I told him, write all these musicians, Clark Terry, Joe Venuti, myself, Red Noel, every musician went through playing at a club. You have stories about these. I said, write a book and tell your stories that you know about these people. I tell it to every guy who has ever been on stage as an entertainer. Write your order.
This is history.
I'm a George Gershwin. I'm a George Gershwin freak, and I have 10 George Gershwin books, and jazz historians wrote them. And they all write about the same story, but there's always a little different thing in there. Yeah. My book came from, I wrote every word in that book. The other name, Terry Janelle, was a jazz historian who sat with me, who gave me some ideas because he wrote books, and he also checked out every story I wrote to make sure that I knew what I was talking about. I wrote every word in that book, and I think every jazz musician who has a little history behind him should write their autobiography while they're alive.
I agree. I really agree. The book is excellent. The book is called Good Vibes, Terry Gibbs with Terry Janelle, and it is really, I mean, I've read a lot of biographies, autobiographies.
Want me to tell you a funny story about the book?
Yes.
You know, after I wrote the book, it was out, and I get calls from people sometimes saying, Mr. Gibbs, where can I get your book? And as I tell them, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it, I give them the publisher's address. And I get a call one time, Mr. Gibbs, about your book. I said, let me tell you where you can get the book. He says, no, I want to tell you that your book won the ASCAP Deems Taylor Award. And that, by the way, that's one of the most prestigious awards for writers to win. So when he said, your book just won the ASCAP, I said, tell your mother I said hello, and I hung up on him. How do I be put on? Who needs that crap? Yep. I thought he was like, put me on. So I waited about 10 minutes. I called New York to somebody I knew at ASCAP, a friend of mine. I said, some idiot just called me and said, my book won the award. He said, yeah, we're all talking about it. I said, no, give me his phone number. I got to call him and apologize. My book won a very prestigious award, and they flew my wife and I into New York, gave me a suite of rooms, and presented me with that award for the best book. But also won the Recording Industry Award that year for the best book of the year.
Yeah. I mean, incredible.
Because it's very anecdotal, very easy reading, you know.
Yeah, and you it's a very funny book actually, because there's so.
Well, it comes from I love to laugh, and it comes from the horse's mouth. I wrote every word in that book.
There's just one point was you were talking about that point where nobody wanted to follow Charlie Parker, but there was one guy, Terry Scott? Tony Scott, and he said, what was that quote? He wasn't all there or something.
At that time, Tony Scott was mentally screwed up. I mean, he was a good clarinet player one time. Yeah. What happened with Tony Scott? When I heard him first in Juilliard, it sounded like Benny Goodman, and he sounded great, but he couldn't catch on to the language of bebop, and he didn't, and he was frustrated really because he sounded like Benny Goodman, but he wanted to play bebop. And at that time, he didn't know what he was doing, and he was. I didn't believe. At least, thank God, somebody came up and followed Charlie Parker. 'Cause I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I followed Tony Scott, but not to Charlie Parker.
Yeah, that was the funny part, because you were saying nobody was going to follow Charlie Parker, but this guy was, but he wasn't all there, which I thought was funny.
Because there's no way I can tell you how scared I was.
Yeah.
I'm serious. If you know the name Mike Tyson in his prime would not wear a bathrobe, and I used to box, and not wear socks. He come out with his shoes with no battery. Come out and knock out the guy in the first round. So I said in the book, I'd rather fight Mike Tyson than follow Charlie Parker. One hit with Mike Tyson, boom, I'm out. That's the end of it. But stand there for 30-some-odd quarters while Charlie Parker's playing and thinking you're not going to have to come in next, forget about it. That was like nervous breakdown style.
Actually, one more thing that I really found interesting. You said Artie Shaw's chorus on Stardust was perfect.
That's a bebop chorus without a doubt.
Yeah, and he wasn't a bebop player, right?
No, but that you know something? He was, but he didn't realize it. But Artie Shaw tried to play real bebop. He sounded like he was playing Jewish weddings. Like tell you, he didn't know how to play the triplets and things. He should have stayed like he was, because how he played was very melodic. Artie was very melodic.
Well, what can I say? I mean, Terry Gibbs is one of the masters, and he's really shared so many anecdotes. Yes, we have to do this again very soon, because I think...
because I'm going to be 97 in October.
No, but because I really want to get more of how you teach. I love what you said about... You don't do that whole modern way of teaching, and you go straight to the sound, and that I like that. I think that's the kind of music education that we need.
I like the basic. You know, the basic. You got to go to the root of. Listen, if you want to play like John Coltrane, you don't go. You don't go to John Coltrane. Go to where he started. John Coltrane was a rhythm and blues saxophone player when he started. But everybody, the guys who got screwed up are the guys who went to John Coltrane when he was really screeching, when he was searching for something. Because it was easy to do that. You could screech and just play any note. But go to John Coltrane when he played with Miles Davis. That was John Coltrane.
Terry, did you ever record Giant Steps?
Yes. Buddy DeFranco and I recorded. It's on YouTube. We recorded, and not only recorded, but Bill Jackson, who wasn't my closest friend, reviewed it for Downbeat and gave it a great review. He said, because we played it at a slow tempo. See, playing at a fast tempo, you could cheat. You could do anything because the chord change. If you know music, every 2 beats, the chord changes.
Yeah.
And what can you play in 2 beats? It's so fast. So we played it slow, like really at a slow tempo. And it's on my, what do you call it again? It's all, if you go to my webpage, terrygibbs.com, it's on there.
Great. I'll definitely
A buddy of mine is playing it.
Definitely check it out.
But you see, once again, playing it fast, you can play a chromatic scale, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
You can go up, down, you go up, down, and get away with it. Because the chord changes move so fast. You know, let me tell you, John Coltrane practiced that for months before he recorded. He threw Tommy Flanagan a curve when he put it at him. Tommy Flanagan didn't know what to do. None of us knew what to do when you first saw it at the chord changes.
Well, Terry, here's a question that I found interesting is when you see a 2-5, some people that I've asked, they ignore the 2, or some people ignore the 5.
I don't know what they're talking about when they say 2-5.
Oh, I mean, let me rephrase that. When they say D minor 7, G7, some of them don't, like someone like Joe Pass, he says, I don't even think of D minor 7, I only think G7. And some people say, I only think of D minor 7.
Yeah, that's right. G7 is the really chord that, when the songs are written, they didn't use a D minor 7 flat 5 with G7 to go, or D minor 7. They just used the basic chord change. But then, when Bebop started, we found what went with G7 we could use. What other chords we can use. We can go from, now, once again, you don't know music, but I'll say it anyhow. We can go from D minor 7 to G7 to C. We're in the key of C.
Yeah.
We want to go to C. We can play D minor G7 to C. Or we can go to D minor 7 to G7 to A flat minor 7 to D flat 7 right down to C.
Yeah.
We can throw that in there and it'll fit. But you have to know chord changes. I don't see, the thing is I didn't, you know, it's like street learning the street, being in the streets and learning from the streets.
Yeah.
I learned chord changes backwards and forwards from playing with different guys and telling me these chord changes and these chord changes,
Wow.
you know?
Right. Well, I'm going to have to call you again because...
Nicole, it was a drag talking. I want you to know that.
Yeah, it was really a joy to
I just wasted an hour and a half of my precious time of doing nothing talking to you.
It was a real honor for me. And
I understand, I'm 96 years old, and the COVID thing, there's nowhere to go. My big thing, on anniversary, I went from my living room to the kitchen.
I'm going to call you again, and I'm going to ask you about your way of learning, because I think that is the right way. I like the way that you talk. I don't like the modern stuff myself. I'm a one of the newer generation, but I don't like this the way they teach it.
Because, you know, something, it's not the root.
Yeah.
You got to go to the basic part.
I agree. Tell you what, Terry, I'll call you again soon, and then let's do another one of these.
All right.
And we're gonna talk about.
You're a good interviewer, Nicole, so it's nice talking to you.
It's a real pleasure.
But try not to bother me too much, will you?
Well, I don't know. You just gave me your phone number. I might call you quite often.
I did. What an idiot I was. Hey, Nicole, this was fun. Yeah. It was nice talking
Well,
to
Terry,
you.
it was a pleasure.
And I'm glad I could answer your questions.
Yeah,
you know.
no, I have more. So I'll call you soon. So the great Terry Gibbs, he's a master. Buy his book, Good Vibes. And check out his albums. He's really a master. He's a real legend. Okay, Terry, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, thanks, Nicole. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right.